Welcome to this webinar. This webinar, we are calling it Civic Action Spiritual Calling. And we are really very pleased to have you join us. We welcome you for this particular webinar, and we are very, very pleased to be with you today. So the webinar, as we have called it, is We Carry the Fire, Civic Action as Spiritual Calling. And we have a number of panelists whom will be asking to introduce themselves at some point. But for the time being, I want to invite Dr. Henning Purwati from ICEA and Muhammadiyah, both organizations being in Asia and both of them being part of the Muhammadiyah family in Indonesia, one of the largest Muslim organizations in Indonesia, to lead us in a word of prayer, a short word of prayer in the opening. Dr. Henning.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Mr. Patrick. Good evening from the Indonesia. I'm from Jakarta. So my name is Henning. I am from the ICEA, head of the Environment Division in the ICEA, and also in a part of the Muhammadiyah in the Muhammadiyah Disaster Management Center. Thank you very much. I will pray with my religions. I will start with Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Ar-Rahmanirrahim. Maliki yaumiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghairil maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Amin. Ya Allah, we will start our activities today with name of you, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. We start with love. We start with basmalah for our activities, and hopefully everything will be done right and everything will be done useful to all of us and also useful for our network, also for our work. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Dr. Henning, for the prayer. I want to say that as we start now with the prayer, the webinar is open, and I want to quickly just mention and introduce that we have a webinar titled We Carry the Fire, Civic Action as Spiritual Calling. And we have a number of panelists that I'm going to ask to introduce themselves. And I also request them to have their cameras on so that we can do the introductions. Hope, if you can also have your camera on. As we get into the introductions, allow me to mention that different people are in different religions, and those religions offer values and moral warrants that inform the way people behave, the way people act. And that acting can either lead to people taking action or not taking action to address social injustices. And based on the values that are articulated by the different religions, the actions or inactions that are taken by different people can lead to outcomes that are either beneficial or that are harmful to democracies, to nature, to life, and even the spiritual well-being of the different people. Religions exert a lot of pressure and a lot of influence on policymakers and policy making, registration, and many of the systems that we know, whether it's education, whether it's health, whether it's the social systems. And therefore, it's very, very important for us as we look at the faith and how faith impacts on people, that we are able to then reflect on the role of the faith in promoting civic action and promoting civic action, and whether also this promoting civic action has scriptural basis. I will therefore ask the panelists to introduce themselves, and I will give each person at least a minimum or a maximum of at least a minute and a half. And in introducing themselves, they only speak about their names, their institutions, and religious affiliations. I want to start with Hope. Hope Dunira.
Yes, thank you very much, Peter. Hello, everyone. My name is Hope Dunira. I am from Apostolic Women Empowerment Trust. We're based in Zimbabwe.
Thank you very much, Hope. I'll try to mix. So I'll have, I see Sheikh Zagome has moved. I'll have Reverend Canon Grace Kaiso.
Greetings, colleagues. Reverend Canon Grace Kaiso. I serve, I think, as chair of Faith to Action Network and based in Kampala.
You're most
also
welcome.
Support the Interreligious Council of Uganda.
You're most welcome, Reverend Canon Kaiso. Emily.
Greetings, everybody. Pleasure to be with you all. My name is Emily Vedrud. I work as a policy advisor for the Church of Sweden, and Church of Sweden is a Lutheran church. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emily. Sheikh Rethome.
Thank you very much, Monene. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace of God be with you all. Good afternoon, good night, good morning. My names are Sheikh Ibrahim Lethome from Kenya. I represent the Supreme Council of Kenya Muslims. I am a lawyer by profession and also a Muslim scholar, and it's a pleasure to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sheikh Rethome. Dr. Henning, introduction.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, good afternoon, good night for everyone. My name is Henning. I am from the Aisyah Muhammadiyah, Indonesia.
Welcome. And finally, Reverend Dr. Hein.
Yes, I am a retired Lutheran pastor. I have been a seminary professor. I have done grassroots organizing, and I have also been director of Bread for the World Institute. And I'll say a few things about that later.
you very much, our panelists, and we want to welcome all the participants who have come from different countries. And to be honest, there are quite a number of countries that they represent, and we'll be noting the countries that they represent as we progress. So allow me then to get to the introduction in terms of the panel. And I want to start by requesting Dr. Henning, who will be sharing with us a little bit about Ta'awun in very brief, and noting that Dr. Henning is engaged in Indonesia's women movement through ICEA, campaigning for human rights. And ICEA, being an Islamic organization in Indonesia, is dedicated to female empowerment, and is also doing a lot of charitable work. ICEA was formed in 1917 to facilitate women's access to education, health, and social services. Dr. Henning, you have raised awareness on climate change and have engaged in Muhammadiya's response to the current COVID-19 pandemic. So we would want you to kindly tell us where you draw your inspiration from, and speak a little bit on Ta'awun, kindly. Where do you draw your inspiration from? And a little bit on Ta'awun, please.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Pak Patrick, and everybody here. So I would like to share our presentation. May I share our presentation? Okay, I can share our presentation. So our presentation start with this is a really of Ta'awun substance, but it is more deeply than Ta'awun, because the Ta'awun is the substance and also action. And here I put the more deeply, because this is the spirit. The spirit here, I put this, how to implementation of Ta'awun is before. So this is the eco-jihad. Eco-jihad is striving to protect our ecosystem. And with this, so with why we put up our Ta'awun, because of the Ta'awun, we sit and we ensure in our mind and our heart that the limit is not fit. So that is really from the our Al-Quran, Al-A'raf, ayah 96 until 98. So Al-A'raf mentioned about like that. In 1906, so do no mischief on the earth after it had been set in order, but call on him with fear and longing in your heart, for the mercy of Allah is always near to those who do good. Number 2, Al-A'raf 57, it is he who sendeth the winds like heralds of glad tidings, going before his mercy, when they have carried to heavy laden cloud, we drive them to the land that is dead, make rain to descend thereon, and produce every kind of harvest therewith. Thus shall we rise up the dead, verses they may remember. At the last of the Al-A'raf 58, from the land that is clean and good, by the will of the creature spring up produce, rich after its kind, but from the land that is bad, spring up nothing, but which is negligently. Thus, we do explain the sign by various or symbols to those who are grateful. From this, we ensure that about the eco jihad and coming to the ta'awun is Allah forbids human from doing damage to the earth after Allah has repaired it. Namely, after Allah has created a barren area by bridging in the rain from the which fertile plants will grow. However, in this verse, Allah also explained that whether or not in the plant is fertile, return to the soil condition. It means that rain will be blessing by growing plants if the soil conditions are good, and vice versa. If the soil is damaged, the plant growing and its language so cannot develop to its full potential. And after this, we see that really and around of us is coming the disaster, and also now we got like a pandemic situation. So in the At-Rum ayat 4 mentioning about the damage has been seen on land and sea area caused by the action of human hands. So everything is not by Allah, but it is the human hands. So that Allah may feed of them same to the result of their action. So they return to the right part, of this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Henning.
At the last, maybe I can one things, one or maybe only 1 minute.
Okay.
Okay. At the last, that is a conclusion, for the action of ta'awun. The interpreted from this, the meaning of the damage here is act of destruction carried out by human against nature, while bloodshed can occur by form of the conflict of war between fellow of human, taking care of the earth and the embodiment of one's monotheism. We can doubt one's monotheism in one commits destruct action and does not protect the environment. So eco-jihad is content of value of balance and fairness of the environment management and the humanitarian. So why so ta'awun will action with this? Thank you very much. Back to Pak Peter.
Thank you very much, Dr. Henning. Thank you very much for that sharing on ta'awun. I think the takeaway there is humans carry destruction to earth, and that there is need for balance and fairness, and that's the spirit of ta'awun. Dr. Hain, your book is based on a wrong experience of civic action that you have been involved in collaboration with diverse institutions, such as Bread for the World. And out of those experiences, you have now published a book, We Carry the Fire. And it speaks to family and citizenship as spiritual calling. And as you reflect on this book, can you share the main ideas of this book, please, with us?
Yes, thank you for the invitation. Thank you to each and every one who is on this webinar, but especially to Peter and his staff for their good work in bringing this together. It warms my heart to know that people around the world share, people of different backgrounds, different faiths, nonetheless share in this important work. The title of the book comes from a novel written by Cormac McCarthy. It won the Pulitzer Prize, and the book was titled The Road. And in this book, a father and a son are heading south from cold weather, and they are seeking food in a dystopian, apocalyptic world where the environment has been ravaged. And so people find food or sustenance wherever they can. They sleep somewhere alongside the road. And as they travel, this father and son, they enter a house and they see starving people being held prisoners because some hunters have kept them locked there for future food. That is to say, they are going to be eaten. And the father looks at the son and he says, "We don't eat people. We are the good guys. We carry the fire." What I understand carrying the fire to mean is that we support one another like family, and we don't compromise civilized, humane values, even under intense, impossible pressure. We would rather starve to death than eat people. So I think it's about family and about values. Now, each word in the title tells you something about the book. The word "we" in "We Carry the Fire" is about solidarity. Solidarity in two ways. We stand in solidarity with people and a planet in need. That's one way. And we secondarily, we stand in solidarity with each other. None of us can do it by ourselves. It takes all of us working together to accomplish the goals we seek. Okay, that's solidarity, the word "we." We carry. Carry means that it's about action. It's not just about good ideas. It's not just about good intentions. It's not just about thinking of doing something, but it's about doing something real. We work hard. We never quit. Okay, we carry. We carry the fire. Fire is about what we carry and how we carry it. We have a fiery passion for humane values, caring for people and the planet in a way that is so deep, is so profound, that it is spiritual. It rises out of the deepest parts of what it means to be human. And then there's a subtitle. So that's "We Carry the Fire." And then the subtitle, I think, is fairly obvious. Family and Citizenship as Spiritual Calling. The word family refers to your closest relationships. When they're at their best, they're the model for the human family, since ultimately we are all related. A virus that starts in one place can kill people around the world. We are all dependent on one another for daily food. Climate change is not just going to affect my country or your country, it's going to affect all countries. We are one big human family. Now, in the title, Family and Citizenship, even the word "and" has a certain meaning, a little word like that. Family and citizenship means we are responsible not only to help families, but to help democracy prevail by being good, active citizens. Aristotle wrote that in order to have good government that prevents war and provides education and has good, you have to have good people. So good government takes good people, but good people take good government. It takes good people to make good government because the government is made up of the people. Family and citizenship. We not only need to support one another personally, those who are close at hand, but those whom we do not see, those whom we do not know, through politics as a way of nurturing and supporting people who are far away and strangers to us. Politics is a multiplier, and good citizens work for good government that supports families. And finally, as a spiritual calling. Some people, at least in my experience, think of spirituality as all about themselves. It's all about me. It's all about feeling good about myself. And yet, how can you feel good in a world where there are 27 cases of human trafficking every day, where climate change threatens us all, where 21,000 people die of hunger-related causes every day? Working to mitigate pandemics, tyrannies, wars, environmental catastrophes that do violence to families and societies is, to me, a deeper spirituality than one that just is about me or about me feeling good. It's about needy people and a needy planet. The spiritual calling that I'm talking about has outcomes in the real world. It's tangible. It's not just mystical. It is mystical, but it has actual, real, objective outcomes. People live or people die. Nature is defiled or nature is restored. And so when we do these things, we experience a profound sense of spiritual meaning as we link our lives with humanity's deepest values and highest hopes, together with people of every kind, in every place, on every day, all over the world. What greater spirituality is there than this? So the book also has chapters on religious congregations, but much of what religious congregations do, some NGOs do. That is, it says that congregations provide people with personal support, that cultivates servanthood, provides a sense of meaning, moral socialization, ethical guidelines, a sense of transcendence, and a place to celebrate life with one another. So I found it very inspiring. I've worked on this book for 30 years. One thing that means is I'm a slow writer, but it also means that it's something I've experienced over and over and over and over again in many settings. Thank you for asking, Peter.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hein and Dr. Henning. It's not a coincidence that both of them have H as the start of their names. And we want to congratulate you and thank you very much for the sharing you've done. What is coming out is that different people of faith, whether they be lay people, whether they be clergy, whether they are young, they are women, or they are men, have an inner urge to take action that ends in justice. And this has been demonstrated through different illustrations by our two speakers, Dr. Hein, who has written a book on We Carry the Fire, and Dr. Henning, who has explained the spiritual foundation of Ta'awun. As we turn from the two speakers, I want to now invite Reverend Canon Kaiso to tell us what is happening in Uganda at the moment. We know that Uganda held its general elections recently. We had many things around the general elections and many years that have been, their president has been in power. And we want to ask Reverend Canon Kaiso to reflect with us and explain to us about religion, elections, and civic education in Uganda, and what Reverend Canon Kaiso has done while working with the Interreligious Council of Uganda, and what he has personally done to promote civic education and working with other faith organizations in Uganda regarding the elections. Reverend Canon Kaiso, I will kindly request that the panelists who are not speaking, if they can put their videos off.
Well, colleagues, thank you so much for this time and for the input we already received from our colleagues. I have been requested to share a bit of experience. We've gone through an election in Uganda, and I was privileged to support the Interreligious Council of Uganda as it sought to accompany the population through these elections. Obviously, as you can imagine, holding an election within the context of COVID was in itself a big challenge. The president, in his own words, said we were going to have a scientific election. We didn't quite appreciate that, but I think as events unfolded, it became clear that the elections will not meet the basic standards of a free and fair election, just given the environment in which they were held. In summary, our experience of these elections, which were held in February, I have tried to summarize it this way. I have worked in democratic processes for a long time, but this particular election highlighted for me a democracy that was arrested, that was tortured, that was sentenced, and was eventually imprisoned. I'll very quickly go over what I mean by that. A democracy that was arrested, I mean the powers of all the institutions, the constitutional institutions, like the Electoral Commission, like the police, were usurped and turned into instruments of serving the narrow political interests of the incumbent party, the party that is in power, has been in power for 38 years. So we found a democracy that was arrested in that sense, that all constitutional institutions were, and their powers were usurped and turned into instruments of serving the narrow political agenda of the national resistance movement, which is the party of the current president, which has been in power for 38 years. Then we experienced a democracy that was tortured, because during the campaigns, the political freedoms were all curtailed. The people, the candidates of in the opposition were treated as if they were illegal. They were not allowed to campaign. They were not allowed to move freely. So it appeared as if they were not properly constituted, and yet they were cleared by the Electoral Commission. It also appeared as if some choices were criminal. Those who seemed to support the opposition parties were harassed, and their freedoms of assembly and expression were minimized. So we found a democracy that was under torture because people would not express themselves as they ought to. They could not, it was too costly to support one's party or candidate of choice. Then a democracy that was sentenced. We found that during the whole process, all the political institutions, all the institutions were weakened. The three arms of government, you have the executive, you have the executive, you have the legislators, and all of these were completely weakened. Even the police institutions, all those were weakened. So it created a space where the culture of impunity increased so much during the election. People would be arrested. If you were taken to a police station, probably nothing would be done. And lastly, we also experienced a democracy that was imprisoned. Why I explain it this way is if you look at a company, you have managers, then you have the directors. And ordinarily the directors give guidance, the direction of the company. They give direction to the managers. In our context, the managers, who are the politicians, have usurped the powers of the directors, who are the citizens. And therefore, there is very limited opportunity for informed debate on issues. The media, civil society, space is constrained. So that was the environment in which these elections were held. What did we do? We realized that because all the institutions had become agents of the ruling party, we needed to intervene. So my role, personally, was to write what we call issue papers, which we used to engage with the institution, the electoral commission, the military intelligence group, the political parties, just to raise the fundamental issues of having the freedom and ensuring that there's credibility in the process. We also created awareness within the population about the importance of an election, but also the appreciation that elections don't resolve all the problems. Because sometimes the population's attitude to elections is that they will solve the elections, their issues. But we are trying to help them to say, in a democratic process, elections are just a step. It helps, yes, to define the issues, to highlight the areas of challenge, and the possibilities of the next stepping stones, so that people don't invest their whole hope in the electoral process. But we encourage them to participate effectively and to engage and to avoid and refrain from violence, and also appreciate that elections themselves are critical to nation building. We helped them to also appreciate that the post-election period is as critical as the elections themselves. And so we are pleading with them to be prepared to accept the outcomes of the election, and where they were aggrieved, to seek legal action within the law. So I think in brief, that is what the environment was and how we tried to engage with that environment.
Thank you, Reverend Canon Kaiso. That's very educating, very enriching, and also very informative. To hear that a democracy can be tortured, it can be arrested, it can be headdressed, it can also be in prison. That's quite a different way in the way we have looked at democracy. But I'm sure very many people who are participating in this particular webinar would agree with many of the sentiments that you have shared. And thank you very much. I want to turn to Hope. Hope Dunira from the Apostolic Church, Women Empowerment in Zimbabwe. Hope you have worked with Apostolic Women Empowerment Trusts, and you have been advocating to end gender-based violence among the apostolic communities in Zimbabwe. Can you tell us more about the apostolic community and let us know about your advocacy work?
Thank you very much, Peter. So my name is Hope Dunira. I am from Apostolic Women Empowerment Trust. We work with the apostolic community. So the apostolic population, like in Zimbabwe, it makes up plus 38% of the population. And it then becomes the biggest grouping of people under one certain religion in the in Zimbabwe, actually. So the apostolic community makes up the greatest population of Zimbabwe. So as AWET, we are working with all apostolic churches in the country. Apostolic churches have different doctrines. The dressing could be different. The doctrines could be a bit different. But the one thing that we know is the same across all apostolic churches is the way women are treated due to negative male masculinities, due to some of the church doctrines, and due to a patriarchy as well. So as Apostolic Women Empowerment Trust, we are engaging within apostolic churches. We have been working on ending gender-based violence within apostolic churches. And we have a program that we are currently doing. We are working with many other organizations under the Spotlight Initiative, which is a global call to end violence against women and girls. And AWET is part of this global call. And we are ensuring that we are working in communities, specifically with the primary target being the apostolic community. So within the 23 districts we are working in Zimbabwe, we have been training what we call behavior change facilitators. We have 135 in each of the districts. We're targeting 3 districts, and we're training 45 in each of the wards, 3 wards, 45 per ward, which means 135 per district. And we have 23 districts we are working in. So currently, I think I also have to say we are very grateful for having been part of the process where we were also doing the policies, where we had to come to South Africa. And because this has helped us in the work we are doing, within the districts that we are working with, we are also sharing with apostolic leaders the drafts of the policies, and we're encouraging them to have policies, gender policies within the churches, so that at the end of the day, women are protected, girls are protected within the churches, children are also protected, and we also have men that are sensitized to be able to handle empowered women within the communities. So within the apostolic communities, we are actually advocating for an end to gender-based violence. We are saying we need gender equality within apostolic churches. We need women to have rights as well. We need the girl child to go to school, because if you look at statistics and research, it points to the apostolic community having the highest rate of child marriages. And if you look at the highest rate of child marriages that's taking place, it automatically means those girl children are dropping out of school. So we are encouraging the girl child to be in school for longer periods. And we are doing this in many other districts we're working in. We have a program that we're actually working on as well, the Supporting Adolescent Girls Education Program, where we are giving girls a second chance to education. So this empowerment, in other words, we are trying to encourage apostolic children to go to school. We are encouraging apostolic women to stand up for their rights. And we are also encouraging the men from the apostolic communities to treat women equally within apostolic communities. So this is the work that we've been doing. And based on the foundation that we received when we actually were part of the policy briefs, we have managed to reach over 5,000 leaders within the different apostolic churches who are actually standing up for the rights of women and girls as well, and advocating for an end to gender-based violence within apostolic churches. As a closing, I would like to say thank you, Peter and Isaac. I received the We Carry the Fire book this morning, and I hope I'm going to enjoy that as well. Thank you very much.
Hope you're most welcome. And thank you very much for sharing what the apostolic organization has been doing. I think this has been very, very interesting, but we have only heard so far about the book and the experiences of Africa. And this might be considered to be an issue that is regional. So I want to cross over from Africa and the experiences that have been shared by the apostolic community and also the Interreligious Council of Uganda through Reverend Canon Grace Kaiso and Hope Dunira, and cross over to Europe. What is happening in Europe? Are you also taking action against injustices to address that particular injustice the same way? Would like to hear from Emily. I am reluctant to pronounce her second name out of many reasons. My mother tongue is very, very poor when it comes to combining especially vowels. It is very, very bad. So I'm requesting Emily from the Church of Sweden to share with us about the Swedish Church and what it has done in terms of the different issues that relate to addressing injustice and taking action. Emily, you are most welcome.
Thank you so much, Peter, and a pleasure to be here. My name is Emily Vedrud. I do not take offense that you can't pronounce, most Swedes can't pronounce my surname, so it's totally forgiven. I am a policy advisor at the Church of Sweden, primarily working at the national level. So I will speak mainly to the national context. And for those that don't know, the Church of Sweden is a Lutheran faith community, which acts both internationally as a church and professional faith-based organization within the humanitarian field, development and advocacy, as well, of course, locally and nationally in Sweden. And it is also classified as the largest civil society organization with its 6 million members in a membership, or there's just over 9 million inhabitants in Sweden. So it is the largest faith community and also classified as the largest civil society organization. So how it's taken action in society and speak for those that are living in marginalization or against injustice is in so many different ways, and I will try to just highlight a few. And I just will start by kind of speaking from two theological standpoints where that comes from. With, of course, there are many. And one is that kind of speaks to this, and that also really relates to engaging on injustice, is this document called The Church in the Public Space, a study document from the Lutheran World Federation, which the Church of Sweden is part of, among many others, a global federation. And it states, among many things, as church, we engage in the public space, not in spite of our faith, but inspired by. God rules over both the worldly and the spiritual realm, and this means that no aspect of reality is outside the grasp of God's commitment to this world, and no aspect of reality outside God's reach. Another basis for this engagement, or in society for justice, is drawn from the Bishop's Letter on Diaconia from 2016. That's a church document. And it states, God's love for his creation is not limited to those who are believers in Christ. It is total and inclusive, as well as the fundamental values of compassion, solidarity, personal autonomy, and integrity forms the basis of a functioning democracy, not the other way around. And for this reason, the fundamental values need to be rooted in contemporary culture, education, and religion. And civil society and faith communities here have a role. So, yeah, just to kind of form the baseline that the church does engage in society and injustice work due to its faith, and due to the needs it sees on the ground and the responsibility to respond to the needs of today or those that were before. I will bring up three examples, because my prompt was, how does the church engage in crisis? And also I think it's important to think about, what do we mean by crisis, apart from being faith institutions that have a very long view of time. Also, what is crisis could be, we look at the climate crisis as a crisis, even if it's not been as immediate, or it is, as the COVID-19 response, for example. So two examples that were more in the immediate kind of changes happening in society, and faith communities being part of responding. And also I will say that, of course, the Church of Sweden isn't the only faith community that responds, that all faith communities from a multi-faith perspective engaged in these issues. One is then the migration wave into Europe in 2015 and after. And the Archbishop Antje Jackelin from the Church of Sweden said, "A period of crisis is essentially also a period of learning. We know that each new crisis also opens windows of opportunity." So in the autumn of 2015, organizations and faith communities and spontaneous networks was of great importance to solve the practical problems stemming from the large influx of refugees in 2015. And Church of Sweden was one of those very, very crucial actors, where 8 out of 10 or 83% of congregation across the country organized to ensure that society would meet the needs of people, because this is what we were called to do, meet the needs of people. And still now, this is something that is in place all over the country as a crucial actor alongside working with now, both newcomers, but also integration work in partnership with interfaith councils, local government, municipalities, working together for social cohesion. And out of this work came a program called The World of Neighbors. I will maybe put that link in the chat, which is the aim of strengthening interreligious relations between faith-based actors working with and for people on the move, migrants and refugees in Europe. And that's the basis, is to create a community of practice, learning from practice, and making the work that has happened over these years, or where we have learned to live together. How do we make that visible, connected, and how do we lift that up to learn from it? Which is very much, I think, or that it states itself as being very much working on SDG 16 on peace. And the learnings from 2015 very much lend itself to being able to respond then when the crisis hit in 2020, as it did all over the world, in regards to COVID-19. And there, in terms of the same as in many parts of the world, even though it's not equal impact, of course, communities in more poverty, also in Sweden, were more impacted by the pandemic. And the challenge to the Church of Sweden was, how do we not shut down but reform? How do we do diaconal and pastoral work online? How do we shift and work with this new situation at hand? And I wanted to highlight a few things from that there's challenges for churches on short and long term, in terms of both in short and long term when this kind of crisis hits, both in terms of obviously the economic challenges, when they can step into the shoes of what can be maybe a public responsibility, meeting those increased social needs and knowing how to respond in this new way, but also on the long-term basis, ensuring that civil society, including also religious institutions, do not also maintain or create structures of parallel protection systems, maybe when there is a state responsibility where that is existing. And that what sometimes can happen in terms of in moments of crisis is that provider work can take precedent before the advocate role towards policymakers, and making sure that when we step into new roles and responsibilities, in times of crisis, as we should, we also be reflective and not let other roles be forgotten or be sidelined, because that does tend to happen. And I want to just end, maybe, if I have, I think, another moment, with another bit of crisis work, and that's for sure the work on climate. And here, I think, in terms of when we look at what is justice work for a faith community, it is very much that, like, the practical work, the advocate work, but it's also very much that which isn't the public-facing work. It's when it comes to climate work in the Church of Sweden, for example, it is both that advocate role and the work of theology, but it's also very much the organizational aspects of doing work on accountability and quality, that we ensure that are we running things or investments or buildings or land stewardships in the best organizational or climate just way possible. It's not just the advocate role, it is very much how are we making sure that our own structures, our own work, our own buildings are climate just, so that we have, whenever we want to speak on justice or injustice, we have credibility because we're doing the internal work at the same time. And I think that's the last point that I will end on, is whenever we look and step into justice work, making sure that we also have not just the responsibility, but the credibility.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Emily, for sharing about what the Church of Sweden has done. I think this is quite interesting, and I really want to encourage participants to post questions on the Q&A section, but also to those that are participating from the different countries to share their experiences as they reflect on what the panelists have said under the chat section. So you are most welcome to continue sharing your experiences also, because I have seen we have friends and colleagues from different countries. I welcome you and encourage you to post your questions on the question and answer section, but also to share your own experiences so that as you reflect on what the panelists have said. So we have heard so far from Dr. Hein and Dr. Henning about how faith can motivate social action. We have then heard we have been given some examples from Uganda, from Zimbabwe, and from Sweden on how faith actors have taken social action to address either nature, issues to do with environment, issues to do with elections, and by extension, therefore, promoting democracy, and also how the faith has welcomed strangers who have migrated from other places, and also responded to challenges, new challenges such as COVID-19 and climate change. Now, I want to welcome participants to be able to engage with the panelists and respond to some of the issues that you might have as questions. I have with me two questions that have been posted already on the Q&A. And the first question will be directed to Reverend Canon Grace Kaiso. Does Kenya have influence on Uganda's democracy? And is that influence either positive or negative? And if Peter, I did not frame your question correctly, you can always rephrase it. Keep the questions coming on the quick Q&A and also the answers, and I'll give the panelists, the first panelist, the opportunity to answer. Reverend Canon Kaiso.
Thank you, Paul, for your question as to whether the Ugandan context benefits or is influenced in any way by the Kenyan politics. I must say that very minimal. You see, Kenyan political climate I have lived in Kenya for the last 10 years. As this tendency of the environment is toxic in terms of the media keeps the electioneering mood alive in the country. So it is as if the elections are taking place tomorrow. You know, if a significant political figure meets another political figure, a story will be told how now they are working at maybe working together or striking a deal. So it is so intense in terms of not allowing the people to sit back and reflect on how the environment is unfolding. It is very much an intense, and also the parties in Kenya are much more dynamic, which is a positive thing, really. The formations can change every election, which is a good dynamic. It means that people are not tied. Maybe there will be a sign of no ideologically. Maybe we would say they are not strong ideologically, but in terms of their formation, you find that they are more amiable, easy, and open to change, and that brings fresh air in the political parties and therefore the environment. Now, in Uganda's politics, the political parties are very static, and maybe I forgot to say about the vibrance of the civil society also in Kenya, and the independence of the other arms of government, you know, parliament, judiciary. You can experience some sense of independence. I mean, that judge who had to cancel the elections, that was quite a sign that an arm of government is actually independent. Now, Uganda's experience is a bit different. I think, first of all, the political parties are so stuck. You don't experience the dynamism, you know. So you feel that there is a sense in which there is lack of fresh air within the political parties. And then the environment, the terrain here is in terms of the independence of the other arms of government is not there. There is a deliberate strategy to ensure that all institutions somehow are serving the interests of the ruling political party. And that will therefore influence the people who are nominated or elected to be, for instance, the chairperson of the Electoral Commission or within the judiciary. Now, I know the process in electing judges, for instance, in Kenya is very much an open process, transparent, and the population participates and engages it, so that the person who is elected then feels that sense of independence, knows that he's there because of his capability and abilities. In Uganda, as I said, the agenda is really to sort of ensure that all the centers of power are somehow serving the interest of the ruling party, which therefore means that the space for freedom of participation and expression is a bit limited here.
Thank you very much, Reverend Canon Kaiso. Emily, there is a question here for you, and the question is, I'll read it as it has come from South Sudan, from our brother Peter. How do faith and civil society organizations balance and check a highly politicized crisis? Emily, if you can help to answer that.
I'm sure there will be others that can answer that from it's so contextual, of course, as well. If I understand it correctly, I'll maybe answer in two ways. I also had to just, like, in regards to what we can mean by checks and balances, and maybe it's also its own accountability. So I think maintaining accountability, if that means also checks and balances of its own institutions, whether that's, you know, the faith institution that I work for, or any other civil society actor, is ensuring its accountability within how it's built, and the democratic structures that it holds, the particular democratic structures that exist within the faith community that I work for instance, is crucial in that. So how do we maintain and hold our own accountability whenever the political climate change? I think one thing that I just thought of now, I think, is also just like, what is this long view? One of the way to keep itself accountable to itself is both the structures that hold it in place, but I also think, what is this theological baseline or values that underpin any of this work? How do we keep ourselves accountable to that? And also, I think with this long view of time, where have we been through these crises or similar crises before, and how do we weather the storms? Because they do come and go. It's not like these times are the first times. And I also think then, in terms of the checks and balances of civil society vis-a-vis society or political power, maybe in a crisis or political crisis. For Church of Sweden, for example, one of the things that I could think of is that whenever there is a increased demand to do or support in other ways because of the crisis that is going on, in some instances there has been, for some civil society or faith institution, practical supports to be able to continue to do that work. As I mentioned just before, just how important it is at these times of crisis that civil society maintains all of its different roles, not just that of support or welfare or covering the crisis, but also maintaining the voice, and that one is very important, especially when you're also in relationship with state or other actors in regards to how do we maintain the role of the advocate and safeguard that as a civil society actor or as a faith actor.
Thank you very much, Emily. I see I have a number of other questions, but I want to give one question opportunity, and then we'll hear the next set of panelists. And keep your questions coming, and we are already directing those questions to the right people to answer them. And keep sharing your experiences. I'm sure we have quite a number of experiences from the diverse countries that are represented in this webinar. The next question really is, I think, is much more open. Actually, there are two questions. One is from Ashley and one is from Ray Martin. So this one will be open to the panelists. Any one of you can answer. Are we in our own practice challenging the unjust structures of society, the unequal power relations between the global north and south, and between partners from these parts of the world that act as obstacles to genuine transformation? Or are we complicit in maintaining the status quo and acting as a salve rather than a solution? So that question will be open to all of us, all the panelists. And there's another question again that will also be open to the panelists. So I'm going to read it so that you can note it, and then the two questions can be answered concurrently. Democracies are under threat in many countries around the world. Do panelists believe that faith, traditions, and values favor democracy as the type of government that best advances justice? So those are the two questions that we have for our panelists. I am actually going to paste them on the chat. If you can see the chat, just in case you need to refresh, or I can, I could screen share the questions and we get the answers. So there are the two questions. This is question number one. This is question number two. You can pick on any, and I don't want to give an order in which those questions can be addressed. To the issue around democracies under threat, or that's the statement. Democracies are under threat in many countries around the world. do panelists believe that faith, traditions, and values favor democracy as the type of government that best advances justice? I know we have not as yet listened to Sheikh Redhome, but I would ask him to kindly attempt to answer that question. And the answer that will be given will also be a point for us to depart from the question and answer for now and go to listen to the next panelists, starting with Sheikh Redhome, and I'll be directing on how that is done.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I hope I am audible enough. It is heavily raining where I am. I'm in Mombasa, Mtwapa. It's raining heavily. Now,
you're audible.
Do faiths favor democracy? Maybe the question should be, are they supposed to favor democracy? And if so, are they playing their rightful role to support democracy? If by democracy, we talk about everybody having their rights, the minorities having their rights, the majority having their way, and the rule by people who are elected by the people themselves. Because we say democracy is the rule by the people for the people. Then religion is always about fairness. Religion is about listening to the rights of the voices of everybody. Religion is about making sure that the weak are also taken care of. Now, religion, of course, if put into practice as a tool to ensure that people get their rights, of course, religion is a powerful tool to ensure that everybody gets their rights. Are they doing that? The faith organizations. I feel a lot is being done, but we still have a long way to go. My only problem, Peter, is this, and the participants here. It is when now, instead of the faith leaders taking the lead and leading in power, in political power, those who have been entrusted with ensuring that democracy thrives. Now, when they become the leaders and the faith community and the faith leaders now follow them, then we have a problem here. For me, it is like the cat leading the oxen, and it should be the other, or the horse. It should be the other way around. So if religious leaders take their rightful place, then they would be able to guide those who are leading our democratic institutions to ensure that everybody gets their right. And that is a spiritual calling for religious leaders and the faith communities to ensure that democracy delivers. And I'm talking about our experience in Kenya. When faith leaders become now bedfellows with the leadership, so they're not able to correct them. They're supposed to keep them on their toes, to keep them on check. They're supposed to be the voices of the weak. They're supposed to speak for those who are the voiceless. That is all I want to say for now, so that I don't preempt whatever question you'll be channeling to me, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sheikh Redhome. Friends, keep the questions coming, and the questions will be responded to. We'll have another question and answer session, but I want to request that in light of the way time is moving, that we go to the next phase of our webinar, which is actually starting from just where we have stopped with the answer that Sheikh Redhome was giving, and would like to hear more on what civic action, the sort of civic action faith organizations have taken. And we start with Kenya, where we have Sheikh Redhome, who was just now answering the question. And Sheikh Redhome, you have worked with other faith leaders to dispel myths, falsehoods, and misconceptions about civic participation in marginalized communities in Kenya. Kindly tell us more about this work.
Yeah, thank you very much, Monene. Once again, As you know, I represent the Supreme Council of Kenya Muslims, which is the umbrella body that brings together various Muslim institutions in this country. So the membership is not about individuals, but Muslim institutions in the country. And the docket that I serve in is as a legal and religious advisor to the Supreme Council of Kenya Muslims. And this is the docket that deals with how we can use religion to make the world a better place. Because this is a spiritual calling. A spiritual calling, because the belief is that religion is not just about preparing us to go to heaven. Before we go to heaven, we have to live in this world. And God expects us to live good lives in this world before the hereafter. And we have a duty to call people towards what is good and also to call people to forbid what is evil. And Monene, allow me to just correct something with all due respect about the word that you've used severally for the avoidance of doubt. There is the word that has been mentioned severally, ta'awun. The correct pronunciation is ta'awun, ta'awun, because when you say ta'awun, it is plague. Ta'awun means plague. Ta'awun means cooperation or joining hands together. And I want to believe our sister from Indonesia meant that because this is an Islamic terminology, it is ta'awun, meaning cooperation. When you say ta'awun, somebody might think we are talking about plague, but I know it's because of the languages. So with all due respect, and I wanted to correct that. Now about civic action, from a religious point of view, it's all about making the world a better place, looking at what is in the best interest of humanity, making change in community. At one time, people felt that religious leaders and religion actually has no role in civic action, has no role in looking at things that look very secular, like politics, or ensuring people have their rights. And this was demonstrated very well when Kenya was looking for a new constitution. And the leadership then, that is around 2001 to 2010, because that is the period within which Kenya was seeking to review its constitution. The political leadership then wanted to confine the religious leadership in the churches, and the review process should be left to the politicians. But the faith leaders came together, regardless of their faith backgrounds, that is the Protestants, the Catholics, the Muslims, the Hindus, the other churches in Kenya. We came all together under the umbrella that was called the Ufungamano Initiative. And of course, the government of the day saw the religious community as a threat because they said, you have no calling, you have no moral authority to do that. But we said we have a spiritual calling to ensure that the world is a better place, Kenya is a better place. And that is how the Ufungamano Initiative brought us together, because regardless of our faith backgrounds, what is good for all of us, what is bad for all of us. And we felt that we have a duty, a calling from God to ensure that things work the right way. And we were able to participate in the review process. The government had to give in to the religious community, and we were able to be incorporated in the review process. Some of us actually sat in the Constitution of Kenya Review Commission representing the faith communities and looking at the rights of the marginalized community. And I want to give you a small example. In the Constitution of Kenya that we received at independence, of course, generally it talks about the rights of Kenyans, okay, and many other things. But we have specific articles talking about minority communities. Like I'll talk about Muslims as a small community in this country. There is only one article in the Constitution, and that was Section 66 of the old Constitution, that was talking about personal laws of the Muslims being in line with the teachings of Islam and the establishment of the Qadis courts. And I remember the majority of the people wanted that removed, those who are not Muslims. but working together with the other religious communities, that was retained, and the rights of the Muslims as a minority was taken care of in the constitution. If you look at our new constitution, the 2010 constitution, which now, of course, some people are seeking to amend it. I don't want to go into that now because it's a hot topic. One of the gains that we have in that constitution is that we have specific clauses addressing the minority and marginalized community, which was not there in the old constitution. And if you look at the participation of religious communities in that, it's all inspired. It's all inspired by the spiritual teachings. And I want to just share, for example, for Muslims and anybody who has any doubts, the bottom line is that there has to be justice. In fact, justice has been equated to godliness. That when you fear God, then you have to do justice. Then thinking about the weak people. The Prophet, may peace be upon him, says, unsur akhaka zaliman aw madluma, stand with your brother when he is the oppressed and when he is the oppressor. So madlum is a weak person. We are supposed to stand up with a weak person. This is a calling. And in the history of Islam, we have the covenant to rescue the weak one. It is called the covenant of Al-Fudul, which happened just before the advent of Islam. And it was about rescuing a person who was being oppressed. And people had to come together to make sure even the weak in society are taken care of. So this has been our inspiration. And very quickly, Monene, let me talk about a few things that we have done based on these spiritual teachings, which are common to all of us. I call them the connectors. These are the connectors. Regardless of our faith, what is good and what is bad. Between 2001 and 2010, we were able to participate actively in the constitutional review process, and we are able to deliver to Kenyans a constitution that takes care of everybody. We are also able to ensure that the various laws that are passed in the country, that the voices of the weak ones are also heard. And we have several acts of parliament that we have participated in. We know as a minority community, and because of the realities we are living in today, many people have associated violent extremism and terrorism with Islam. So we have come in to try and correct that, because you know that has a threat. It threatens the very fabric of the society, trying to pitting people of different faiths against one another. So as Muslims, and specifically the Supreme Council of Kenya Muslims, we have been able to actively participate in programs to try and correct misconceptions and also correct our brothers, our own, because the religion requires us to be justice, even if it is against our very own. Correct misconceptions and delink Islam from some of these activities that threaten any cohesive and peaceful coexistence. Monene, you know that sometimes back 2 years ago, the government was hell-bent on coming up with a coal plant in Lamu, regardless of the environmental effects that it would, the negative environmental effects it would have. Inspired by our different faiths, we came together under the umbrella of the Interreligious Council of Kenya, and we were able to stop that. During the 2017 elections, the period just before the elections was very scaring because of hate speech. Again, under the umbrella of the Interreligious Council of Kenya, we were able to talk to the various political leadership in the country because we feared we might go back to the era of to 2007, 2008 post-election violence because of the kind of hate speech that was coming about. So these are some of the things that we have been able to do. At a personal level also, we've used spiritual teachings to correct certain harms, like harmful practices in the community. For example, early and forced marriages, and especially this has been affecting girls, and people have been hiding under religion. So we have been able to work closely with the legislature to ensure that there is a law that prohibits early and forceful marriage or forced marriage, and also harmful cultural practices like female genital mutilation. If you look at now the laws that we have, they are very good. The only problem we have now is implementation of the laws. Now, of course, with the pandemic also, which has threatened a lot of things in the country, we have been able to work closely as different faith communities under the umbrella of the Interreligious Council of Kenya to try and help our communities understand the realities of COVID-19 and also accept the adjustments and also the new normal. Finally, Munene, now we are very actively involved in restoring our ecosystem. And last week I had a webinar and I told people there is no Islamic tree, Christian tree, or Hindu tree. A tree is a tree. So when we are restoring the ecosystem, it is regardless of our religious backgrounds. It is good for everybody, and all our different faith backgrounds give us a strength to restore our ecosystem. So that is all I want to say, Munene, because of time. And thank you for this opportunity. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sheikh Rethome. It's a pleasure to listen to you and also to hear how working together the different religions, the different faith communities in Kenya have been able to make progress in different spheres. I want to now invite Dr. Henning and ask Dr. Henning to share her own Asian experience. As our first speaker, when you are starting, you talked about Ta'awun, which have now been corrected. And you've been interested in enhancing communities' resilience to climate change. Kindly share a little bit more on what you have done to promote, to mitigate climate change.
Thank you very much, Papeter. So we started at the last year, the Ramadan until Idul Fitri, and until now. So we collected money, we collected food, we collected also money to give solidarity for all, like for teachers, for people with disability, with the community that didn't lose of the loss of work, and also many. That is number one. So, and then in this Ta'awun work, we also working on the save our earth. And the second of the save of our earth, we protected our earth, which started with the 5 billion planting of trees. So at 2017, we started with the name of Green Indonesia. So the Green of Indonesia is our commitment for the earth. And we started with the planting, but the planting is not only the planting of trees, but the planting is trees with how we care with the trees. So we use the name, it's like we are caring like a mother with children. So because of some of the activities related of the planting of trees, somehow it's only the planting, but didn't more activities to care and to care how build of the trees. And our specific work with the our network is how to planting, how we care, and how to protect this to be grow. So we have like checking time by time for the trees. That is number one. Number two, we have the program. The name is the Family Resilient and Community Resilient. So our program bases with three things. Number one is about the healthy family, a green family, and also a smart logistic, and we care and share. With this, we create in around of the 16 provinces. So Indonesia is totally 24 provinces, and we are working in 16 provinces in around of the Indonesia. So and with this, so we are working with the, 4 items, yeah, a healthy family, a green family, a smart logistic, and care and share. The example of the health of family is how we using jamaah in the some of the community to hearing about the explanation how we are protected ourselves from the COVID-19. So how we can use the protocol, how we can use the protocol in the praying and everything. That is number one. Number two is a green family. We using and planting not only the trees but also the vegetables. We tried that all of the family didn't buy vegetables from the market, from the market, and also from the mall, but they can use from the own of the vegetables plant in around of them of home. So we give vegetables and they can planting in around their home. That is number two. And number three is about the family logistic or logistic family. So we need to keep enough of food with the protein and everything. So we ensure that each of family enough with the logistic. And the last, after we have three things, health, green, and also logistic, it should be care and share. So why that is included between our solidarity, our helping each other, not only like charity, but also the capacity building together, and make it green for the family and make it green to the community. So that is like that, Pak Peter and all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Henning, for sharing with us on how through ICEA you've been able to take action to prevent climate change or to mitigate against climate change by planting of trees and undertaking many other actions. I want to ask Dr. Hein to kindly share with us some retro in terms of the book, We Carry the Fire. Why he actually wrote this book, what's the aim of this book, and what can he do to inspire others to, how can this book be used to inspire others to take action?
Yes.
Dr. Hein?
Yes. Can you hear me? Yes. Let me talk about where I got my inspiration for the book, because I think this points to where many of us have gotten our inspiration. I was teaching in seminary, and then I moved to an organization called Bread for the World. Now, many of you know Brood für die Welt, that's based in Stuttgart. which is a development organization and gives grants and does development projects. But Bread for the World in the United States probably stole that name from the German development agency. But Bread for the World in the United States is different. It has no development projects. It grants funds. It does not grant funds to any organizations in the United States or in other countries. Bread for the World in the United States is an advocacy organization, and it has thousands of members who advocate just policies and sustainable policies they advocate that these policies be adopted by the U.S. government, both as they affect people in the United States and as they affect people in other countries. So my first job there was a grassroots organizer. And so I traveled around the country meeting with local members who were just ordinary people. They were, Bread for the World is a Christian organization, so they were mostly people who were based in churches, and they had all of the duties and responsibilities that everybody has. They had children, and they had the children's activities, and they had their soup supper at church, and they were engaged in charitable work. So they just were doing a lot of the things that people in the United States of good heart and people in religious institutions do, whether they're Muslim or whether they're Jewish or Christian or whatever. But on top of all the work they were doing, they organized people in their congregation. They sometimes went and organized other congregations. And they taught people what the legislation was about. You don't ask people to advocate for something without first letting them know what they're advocating. And when I would go to a church, I would sometimes say, look, here's what we think is good policy, and we want you to write letters, emails. We want you to visit your member of Congress when they come back home. We want you to come to Washington and visit with your members of Congress. We want you to write letters to the editor advocating these policies. But if you think we're advocating the wrong policies, then I would encourage you to advocate against these policies, because this is what democracy is about. People expressing their values and their interests through their attempts to influence their legislators, in our case, the U.S. Congress. And I was so impressed by the work and the people that I was working with all over the U.S. that I came to think of them as saints, citizen saints. They were doing the spiritual work of the Lord through politics, just as they were often also engaged in direct charitable activity. And that so inspired me. The staff, I might say, also inspired me. Things have changed a bit over the years. I started there in 1980, and we were working for near poverty level wages. We had someone who the office got a microwave oven, and it blew out the electric circuits because the wiring was so bad, and they had to turn it off. We had a staff member who had a car that had 250,000 miles on his speedometer, and it stopped working when it got to 250,000. But he was so poor, he couldn't afford to replace it. And I was inspired by the members, and I was inspired by the staff to think that these are the citizen saints of American society. And so I began to think about that. Well, okay, what is spiritual about it? What makes what we're doing spiritual? And so, as I said earlier, I spent 30 years thinking about that and writing and rewriting and so forth. But I still believe that. I still believe that sainthood is not just if you will, a guru sitting on a mat somewhere in a mountain praying. That's a good thing, but sainthood has to do with working to improve the situation of people and the planet. It is doing the will of God. It is doing it daily, day in and day out. It's carrying the fire of God's Spirit through the social order. I could go on, but I'm a preacher, but I think maybe I should leave it right there for a moment, unless you have a further question or comment.
Thank you very much. I know, having spent 30 years coming up with a book, it is, you can go on and on. I agree with you, because it's very inspirational. I've read quite a bit of it, and it's really very inspirational. It gives very many reasons why people should take civic action to address injustices. I want to open our second phase of questions, and I know we have posted a number of questions that were asked along the way to different speakers. I know we have some questions that have gone to Dr. Hain, and some of them have been answered on the chat. I know there is a question that was sent to Sheikh Lethome, and it has also been, it has not been, I think, responded to by Sheikh Lethome. You can answer it directly.
What is the question, Munene? What is the question, Munene?
The question to you, Sheikh, is what is the view of the Kenyan Muslim scholars on social action in Kenya for climate and humanitarian issues?
Thank you very much. I think towards the end of my short presentation, I did say that we are actively involved under the umbrella of the Interreligious Council of Kenya in taking action against that. And that's why we have been able, in that direction, together we have been able to stop the putting up of a coal plant in Lamu and the mining of coal in Mui Valley, that is in Kitui. We were able to do that. And currently we are involved in tree planting as one of the steps towards restoring our ecosystem. Now, the view of the religious scholars up to now, you should know that these are our first baby steps towards working together. During the Constitution Review of Kenya process, we were able to discover the strength that we have together, that we were able to give direction to the Constitution of Kenya process as when we came together. Now, let me be very honest. We still have a lot of sensitization that we need to do at the level of the intra-faith. Within the Muslim community, we still have a few people who feel that we should work as Muslims, just like we have Christian faith leaders who still believe that they can work as Christians only. And a few of us who are advocating for people coming together. So there is still a lot of sensitization that needs to be done. That's what we are doing. That let us focus on the connectors. It's unfortunate we are coming together at a time when the violent extremists, the terrorist organizations are using religion to divide us. But we are still working, that notwithstanding, we are still working together to build trust, to work together on what we call the connectors, what is common to all of us. Remember, there is no earth that belongs to the Christians or the Muslims or the Hindus. The world belongs to all of us. All of us are in one ship. If the ship floats, keeps afloat, we are all safe. If it sinks, we all sink. So we're trying to bring people at the intra-religious level to come to that level of appreciating that we have more strength without compromising our faith, our principles of our own faith, without compromising them, looking at the connectors and leaving the dividers in our mosques and in our churches, working towards social justice and also restoring our ecosystem and making this world, in short, as Reverend Hen said here, making this world a better place. And the focus here is, as Dr. Reverend Hen said here, we are trying to emphasize on the fact that religion is not just about going to heaven. You will earn a place in heaven depending on what you do in this world. And that's why one of the strongest prayers in Islam is, oh God, give us what is good in this world and give us what is good in the hereafter. Nobody is going to heaven perpendicularly. We have to live in this world before going there. So some of them are still skeptical, but we are working on sensitizing them, and hopefully we'll bring a sizable number on board so that we can move together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sheikh Rezome. I want to note that there are a number of questions have actually been answered on the chat. And I note also that there are two hands that are in the air. I've been told that there is a hand from Mohammed Bunbida. Mohammed, it looks like you don't want to ask the question on the question and answer. You want to actually be the one to ask that question directly. Mohammed, if you can unmute.
Yes, Peter.
Mohammed, ask your question, please.
I don't have much question. Mine is just a recommendation that as faith leaders, we need to go ahead with our involvement in civic, promoting civic responsibility, and as well as hold governments accountable. And it's our duty also to make sure that democracies strive across the globe. So that is my submission.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. I have the hand of Annette Mott. If you can unmute.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm sorry, I was actually just composing not a question, but a thank you.
But you have the opportunity. You can also share as much as you'll compose it.
I just want to say, I live in Bowdenham, Maine, and I have a rather provincial life. And it has been so heartening and inspiring to me personally to be able to hear and witness from all the panelists the many ways that they are carrying the fire in so many places and continents. And it inspires me to want to become even more active in my own place, to be carrying that fire as well. And thank you so much.
You are most welcome, and make sure to get the book, because the book speaks on so many other ways in which you can take action.
Yes, for sure, for sure. I'm very thrilled. I had the book, and signing up for this webinar made me speed my way through it, so that indeed I had completed reading it before our webinar started this morning, and I got so much out of it. There's so much food for thought, so many interesting stories along the way that people can connect with and inspire their own action.
Thank you so much, Annette. I want to recognize that we are getting to an area where for some people it will be time for prayers, and therefore I want to say that beyond the questions that have been asked and the ones that have been answered, we are also going to we have all the questions that have been asked on the chat and the ones that have been asked directly. and that those questions will be compiled and the answers also compiled and will be shared with all of us, all the participants. So in respect of where we are in terms of time, I want to close this particular section of question and answer and really give the panelists 2 minutes or a minute and a half each to share maybe their closing ones in terms of something that people can take away. And I want to start with Hope. Hope, you are 1.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Peter. I think for me, my take home would be I would like to thank everyone who's been here. And I would want to say, if we keep working together within the different spaces that we are working in, all working towards the same cause, I think we'll have greater achievements. I always say it's not only about the apostolic community, but it's about the whole world. So if we are going to be going global, all advocating for the same things, I have faith that will make strides and will make a very big difference within all communities that we exist in. Thank you very much.
Is Reverend Canon Kaiso, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, because I'm actually taking, I started your session. So if you can continue with this particular session and get Emily, Henning, Sheikh Lethome, and Dr. Richard Hain to share their sentiments, and yours too, as you conclude.
Yes, thank you, Peter. Thank you for getting us to this point, and thank you everybody for your contribution. This is closing up time, so we want to request, can we request Emily please to give your final comments?
Oh, sorry, that wasn't a very good place I was sitting. I moved back here. Now you can see me. Otherwise I had a beautiful light. Okay, so my 2 minutes, did I hear that right? Or my 1.5 minutes? Okay. Thank you. I think a takeaway from me is that justice work is action, but also that how much it is reflective action or needs to be reflective action, especially as faith communities doing justice work. And I think just like one of the things when I really think about this is that part. That doesn't mean that we stay in reflection. It means that our past or our power or our role influences how we act in justice work. And I think that's important for us to maybe think about, because we are mainly faith networks or institutions here, and that looks so different depending on the context and who you are. It looks very different for somebody, for example, as a mainline religion in my setting, that looks different than a Muslim community in Sweden, for example. So I think then just like where in our context has doing justice work from a faith lens been harmful, either by ourselves or by others, as some of the things that has been raised in the comment as well, you know, where this in relation to the power of faith and how religion is used, and acknowledging that carrying the fire has also, depending on who we ask, burned people. So I think ask ourselves, do we have responsibility or do we have credibility? And I think, for example, I just want to raise an example of if we're doing work to address injustice, how are we relating to our own injustice? And if we are to address power, how have we related to our own power? For example, right now, the Church of Sweden is in a process of and reconciliation process with the indigenous population, the Sami in Sweden, based on an apology on the harms of the church onto the indigenous community. And that's a very important part to in terms of our own justice work, that it has to be also internal. Yeah, maybe I'll stop there. I think that's a minute.
Thank you, Emily. Henning, please. Can you give your closing remarks?
Yes, thank closing remark. Thank you very much, Pak Peter. So for me is, I think, protecting the earth and also protecting peoples from the earth. Oh, starting from a video. Okay. I think protecting of the earth and also protecting of protecting the earth and also protecting peoples from the situation, from the disaster. The example is a duty for all people, and we are from the faith-based group. We have a powerful in this matter. So all of religions teach about the protecting the earth, about the solidarity for others, and therefore important for us how work together to protect with this, with our faith, and we started with our faith, and also we bring together in all of faith based in the world to protect the earth and protect the community. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Hain?
Yes, my final word is not words that I wrote. And I think they're words that we all share. They're from Isaiah 58. Is this not the fast that I choose, to loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor to your house? When you see the naked, to cover them, and not to hide yourself from your own kin. And now just a word from me. When I read this, when I was doing the final draft of the manuscript, the next sentence really jumped out at me in a way that I had never heard it before. Okay, when you see the naked, cover them, not to hide yourself from your own kin. Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up quickly. After we do those things, as we do those things, our light shines forth like the dawn, and our healing shall spring up quickly. Thank you, all of you. I am just totally humbled and inspired by this event.
Thank you, Dr. Henny.
Sheikh Rathome?
Sheikh Rathome, okay.
Thank you very much, Monene. I was anxiously waiting because I have to rush to the mosque. Let me begin by thanking God Almighty, who has enabled us to hold this webinar. It's been wonderful. And in closing remarks, let me remind myself and remind colleagues in this webinar and outside there, because we need to carry this message out there, that religion is an asset and not a liability. Why I'm saying this, Munene, I never attended a forum where people are even questioning as to whether religion is a liability or an asset when it comes to humanitarian work. And what tool is best placed to address the problems facing humanity than religion? Why do I say that? Remember, God Almighty created this world and created all what is in this world, including ourselves, and gave us as human beings the responsibilities to represent Him on this earth. And He did not leave us without guidance. Like the manufacturer of the Toyota vehicle, which is popular here in Kenya, the manufacturer gives us a manual. We follow the manual, then that vehicle will give us the best service. We have the manual from God, our creator, and who created this world, and He is best placed to know what is good for this world. And what does He tell us about making this world a better place? that we should come together in calling upon people to do what is righteous, calling up and joining one another to do what is good, and forbidding people from doing what is evil. And we are supposed to stand up with justice. And I want to quote here from the Holy Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, and that is, you can read this, chapter 4 of the Quran, verse 135. God says, "O you who believe, stand out firmly for justice as witnesses of God, even if it is against yourselves or your parents or your king." And then the Prophet, may peace be upon him, said, because all of us do not have the same ability, but each one of us has to do their little thing. Whoever amongst you sees something that is evil, change it with your hands. If you're not able to change it with your hands, then with your word of mouth. If you're not able to do it with your word of mouth, then hate it with your heart. But that is the weakest of faith. So I expect that each one of us will do their little thing to make this world a better place. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Reverend Canon Kaiso, it is over to you now. And please, as you give your closing remarks, also close for us kindly with a word of prayer.
Yeah, friends, it's been great to be part of this conversation. I think we all feel inspired to move into action, to move from the periphery to the center where action should be taking place. I think we all recognize that we are caught up in some kind of crisis. In many countries, we seem to have all that we really need. We have good constitutions, we have good laws, we have a large number of believers in our countries, and yet we are failing to transform our realities. And this COVID has highlighted for us the gaps, our failure in terms of preparedness, in terms of solidarity, in terms of setting priorities, that we have all been caught unaware almost, our institutions are inadequate in every way. And so caught up in that kind of environment, almost an environment of hopelessness, because there are communities who are living hopelessly, not sure of where the next meal will come from. Some are caught up in situations of conflict. Some are trafficked. Some women, domestic violence is just finishing their lives. The flight, the hope for the young people is diminished. People are struggling with what kind of future they can build out of the hopelessness in which they find themselves. So this crisis, I think we need to get engaged with this crisis, to the depths of this crisis, and then recognize that we are endowed, we've been entrusted, we have the influence in our communities. We have been entrusted with mobilizing capacity as faith leaders. We have broad-based structures on our communities. And we all believe in a God of unlimited possibilities. So these assets that God has entrusted us with, how are we using them? I think there's a need for us to be a bit more accountable for what God has already entrusted us with, and the mission of improving the welfare of the environment, but also of his people. Might it be that, we have collected all the skills, but don't have the power, our book, the fire is in us, you know. We carry the fire. Is it that maybe we're not carrying the fire? We carry the ideas, we carry the skills, the ability, but we don't have the fire. In the Christian tradition, you know, Jesus had equipped all the 12 disciples for the time he had been around. And he realized that with all the experience and the skill they had picked up while he was with them, they would not be enough for them to be able to carry on the mission. So he said, wait until you are empowered with the Spirit of God. Maybe that's what we need to do, to reconnect ourselves with the living Spirit of God, the God that resets our priorities, you know, a God that will push us to transform our lifestyles, you know, and our choices, so that we are able to carry this mission of transforming people, transforming our world, giving hope, and helping people to reimagine of a new future with God. You know, that if they are connected with God, we can transform society, because God is about change and transformation. So the call, my dear brothers and sisters, is to reconnect with this God, because we ourselves are imperfect instruments, and maybe the Spirit of God will cleanse us, help us to make the shifts that we need to make, you know, about ourselves and about our choices, and then be energized to be able to carry out the transformation that is so desperate in our world today. So thank you, brothers and sisters, for being part of this conversation. I hope we will continue to be inspired, and we would be happy to read of stories of initiatives of transformation arising out of this experience, the experience of this webinar. So we wish you God's blessing. Let us pray. Thank you for of course, so before we pray, thank you very much for Faith Action team for putting this together, Matthias and others, Peter, and many others who have supported this process. And also I can see some of the members of the steering committee. Thank you for taking time to participate. Let us pray. Gracious Lord, we thank you for the gift of life and for the calling that you placed on our lives and the way we have rekindled that calling during this webinar. We pray and commit ourselves into your hands. May you be happy to use us as your instruments. May you transform us into effective instruments of transformation and hope. May you watch over your people suffering in great pain and hopelessness in different parts of your world, and open our eyes to those that you are calling us to support. Empower us with your Spirit so that we might be sustained in this mission that you're giving us. Watch over us, O Lord. We ask this in the name of the living God. Amen.
Amen. And thank you so much to the panelists. Thank you very much to the participants. I know for some it was early morning, for some it was mid-afternoon, for some it was late afternoon, and for others it was actually night. And for the commitment that you have shown, and also the patience that you have shown, we want to just appreciate you, and we register our appreciation to all of you and wish you God's blessings. Go and take action. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Puppeteer. Thank you, committee. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Richard.
Bye.
Love.
Bye.